Alright, it's about 10 o'clock on the 19th of May. Let's see where we left off here. Okay, first of all, the black bike is the one I have been riding since I broke the blue bike. You can see it's got what's left of the trailer hitch on it, including the part of the trailer hitch that's supposed to be on the trailer. Also, this one's got a broken spoke on the rear wheel. That's been a common problem. That's the second rear wheel I've got broken spokes on now. I know that there's times riding this, even going to town empty, I'm in first gear, going uphill and against the wind. So the first thing I want to do is write down the sprocket sizes and figure out my ratio. Because if I end up having to pedal the blue trike, I want to make sure I've got low enough gearing that I can pedal it. The other thing I noticed riding this black bike, I've never used the top sprocket on the front. So I'm using the smallest one and the middle one on the front. And I very seldom go more than, like say on the back, if you figure first is the biggest, I'll use first, second, third, and fourth. Yeah, the black bike has a 28 to 28. It's basically 1-to-1 if I counted right. This has got a 36, so it's a lot bigger. And the rear sprocket, the biggest one, is a 28, so it matches what the black bike has. One thought is I could just put a bigger rear sprocket on. Very few of these bikes have a common size between anything. It's weird. So I can't just grab one crank and move it between bikes, usually. I can probably weld a sprocket onto another sprocket with spacers, kind of like how I made the sprocket adapter in that other video where I hang the sprocket and the disc brake together. If I'm reduced to only being able to pedal, and if it works at all, I don't care if it's slow, but it's got to be at least as fast as walking. So if I'm on the level ground, it would be nice if I'm not, 1-to-1 where it feels like I'm walking. The heaviest thing is walking. So I'm going to go figure out my ratios on the computer. It's not super heavy math, but I'm not feeling like I want to figure it out right now. At least I got the wheel this time. Tried to do this without the wheel. It makes it a real pain in the ass. This is a very good day. I've had these things really have a hard time getting them off. I think it should go counterclockwise. We'll try that first. There's a couple of notches here. So if we can give that a bump, maybe it'll loosen itself. Now the real fun begins. Okay, I'm trying to set these in order. Spacer. Without all the parts, you can't tighten it back in. Yeah, it's not going to tighten down. Alright, so this is the one we want. I think that kind of shows up in the lull between the wind. Using a set of washers, I'm able to pick some of the holes that line up between the two. I think we're pretty close to centered. If I loosen it up, I can get it lined up a little better. These washers are a little bit too big. They're interfering with the chain though. So I think I can put it together with regular washers. I'm going to take it apart. But I think this might work, at least for a quick test ride. I'm not quite in first gear back here, but it's close. So I'm going to also try to kludge this back together just for a quick test ride, and then I'll rebuild it because I'm going to want a chain tensioner. You know, because I don't need a full derailleur, because I'm going to eliminate this and just go to maybe 1 or 2 chain sprockets. If I can go to the biggest one, that's 1-to-1 from here to here, and then I'd have an overdrive here. Okay, so I'll just get 2 speeds on the front, 1 or 2 on the back, but it's going to be the 2 biggest ones. Since I've already got the other one taken apart, I might use it and pick one of these sprockets that's close, because as long as I get 1-to-1 or pretty close to 1-to-1, so if I go from this 28 to this 28, and then that's a 37 to a 41, I'll be lower than direct drive. Okay, I got it kind of sitting in place. I'm not sure if it's going to hold. That's a really big angle on the chain, but it's actually not much more than it would be normally. So those are tightened down. I noticed that some of these welds are broken already, but I'm hoping I can get enough of a run out of this just to see what it's like. I'm in second gear here. So yeah, second gear and the low gear here. That will be close to direct drive by the time I go through final drive. So let's just try it out and see what happens. After last time, I got pretty low expectations, right? Okay, it popped out of gear, but I still made it up the hill. Good. I probably can't see it. 340 on the 19th. Okay, I think I got a working prototype. We'll see. So, got the derailleur hanging now. That is I think a 28 tooth. And this is a 24 and a 28. So it's not quite 1-to-1, but when I put the chain on the outer one, that is underdrive, and this is slightly overdrive, so it works out pretty close to 1-to-1. So that's my low range and my high range. I can't do high range right now. It's close, but not quite, so I got to move this a little bit. So I just welded a tab down here, put a bolt through it, and that's hanging. Normally this would hang off of the rear axle. Okay. So since the other chain isn't hooked up yet. Oops, it just fell off again. Of course, this has been working great until I get the camera. Yeah, it fell off again. 0% chance of rain, except for it says 3%. High precision there. Alright, it'll either work or it won't. Alright, see what we get. Lower my expectations again here. I think that's actually working. Whoever thought the bicycle side would be the complicated part? You know, that might not be too bad, actually. I need to dial it just a little bit more, but it's working. So, I guess I'm going to ride it until it breaks. There's optimism, huh? It's not bad. I guess we can quit now. I don't know. It's close. Maybe. That's the thing, it's hard to tell. Try it this way. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning on the 20th. The 20th is Thursday. Yeah, I guess it's... I'm going to make a bunch of changes today. So up until now on the pedaling side, I think I'm on the third or fourth iteration of the jack shaft. So in the meantime, I figured out 3 or 4 problems that are all related to that same shaft, which is good. So now when I make a change, hopefully be the last change. You know, if I would have made the change on version 2, then I still would have had 2 more changes. So I kind of kept pushing it to the next point. So where we're at now, yesterday I got a few test rides in on the pedaling, which is a step backwards because I had already done that, but it wasn't working very well. Yesterday I took off the 6 sprocket, I'm going to call it a cassette, I can't remember if that's the right word or not. Quite often going to town, unless I have a tailwind, I'm in first gear on the black bike. The black bike first gear is a 1-to-1 ratio. So you pedal 1 revolution, the rear wheel turns 1 revolution. That's 1-to-1. Anyway, because I'm running these bigger tires and more weight and rough surface and loose surface, I need a little more power advantage. I don't really care how fast I go. I took apart one of the 6 sprocket cassettes and I took 2 of the biggest sprockets off of it. The biggest one I put on the front, on the pedal crank, which gives me a smaller front crank than the one that was on there. This is on the blue bike. The blue bike was always, the blue bike was a single speed bike. It was geared too high for going to town and too low for coming back. You know, it was never right for any of it. I'd find myself sometimes I'm just in first gear, just, you know, cranking it out. I'm not trying to go very fast. I'm just trying to get there. I need to make sure I've got a low enough gear that I can actually pedal it going up the hill and against the headwind. Then I'll work on trying to get the electric side more and more reliable so I don't have to rely on pedaling. But I've been going at this from a point of view of thinking I'm going to pedal about 70 or 80% of the time, or of the total effort, we'll say. And I'm going to use the battery and the motor as an assist. So it's not going to be electric only, it's going to be mostly pedaling with some electric assist. That way I can keep a smaller battery. The small battery, and I know I can go this far, the big battery should be 4 times as much capacity, so then maybe I can figure out I could go all the way to town and back and not have to pedal at all. That would be great. But that really wasn't my goal. If I wanted to just make an electric motorcycle, that would have been a whole lot simpler. But the goal is to go further than how much battery capacity you have. I got to the point, by the end of yesterday, I have 2 front sprockets now, so that gives me a high and low range. I've got a single rear sprocket. In low range, I'm geared down almost 1-to-1. I'm really close to 1-to-1, which is what I could do on the black bike. So I think I've got all the changes figured out for the jack shaft and the pedaling. Take the whole jack shaft off, and I'll probably take the whole bicycle apart to give myself better access. Yeah, it's today's gonna, and yesterday also. Yesterday started off with about 2.5 steps backwards, but then it got me a little bit closer. When I get this thing done, my ultimate goal is still to go back and put all of this stuff on Turtle. In the back of my mind, when I'm doing things, I'm trying to think, how is this going to work when it gets on Turtle? You know, so I don't want to cut chains yet because it'll be different on Turtle. But you do what you can. So get a pocket full of cough drops and off we go. 9:30. If I could get a constant 5-mile-an-hour wind, that would be all right. We'll take the chain off. This shaft is going to get replaced. I'm going to take that off. I don't think we need it. playing with the positions a little bit since I have to redo it all. Where I had it the first time down lower, the chain coming off the bottom of the sprocket was hitting the frame, which was the same problem I have on the other side. So I was making it symmetrical, and I basically copied the same mistake on both sides. Not ideal, but okay. I'm not going to use that shaft, but I'm using it as a placeholder for now. One of the issues I had... Oh, let's see what's going on. Where the bearing was, it was interference with the bicycle frame. Really hard to get it in, basically. That was dead center on us. I had my head down and I could see it go right between my feet. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, I should check that out too. Every time I move a part, I'll end up putting a bracket right in the way of the other part. If I put this back where it was, it's going to run right through the middle of my... Yeah, that'll be annoying. It could. Just re-drill that hole again. Okay, several days later, honestly, I've got this threaded rod that I just got from eBay. It is 1/2 inch by 20 threads per inch, so then I had to order special nuts to match it. I'm going to start blowing now. So this is the single speed freewheeler. So it's got the ratchet. Okay. I cut the end off. This is a wheel hub. This is the one I've used on Turtle before. It had the single speed sprocket. This is from a BMX bike, okay? So this is now the 24 tooth sprocket. These are actually, some of them are stamped at least. So I welded the 24-inch sprocket. That gives me nearly a 1-to-1 ratio. I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I did a little bit of grinding to clean these surfaces up. These nuts that fit the threaded rod, with a little bit of hammering, got them to fit into here. That's a pretty decent fit. So I'm going to weld the nut on both ends. I'm going to thread it on the rod when I weld the nut. I swear there was no wind a minute ago again. Okay, so I'm going to thread this on. I'm going to take my piece of conduit here, which is also 1/2 inch. It's kind of a loose fit. That should keep me from getting splatters on this shaft. I've got 4 of these, but I'd rather not waste them. And again, on this side, I'm just going to take a little piece of iron pipe left over, slide that over to hide the threads. I'm going to try really hard not to splatter that. When I'm going to weld, now this is the one thing to look for, all right? Try not to screw this up. The part that ratchets, when it slides, is separate from this part here. If you look at this, like there's a silver spot where it was ground, as long as I don't weld this to this, I still have a freewheel, which would be, you know, a really nice thing to have. It'd be nice to be able to coast when the electric motor is running, so we're not, you know, pedaling constantly. not fucked up. 1:42 on the 22nd. I literally had the last handful of tools in my hand and I started getting rained on. Had some big drops. Temperature's already dropped 10 degrees in the last 10 minutes, so that's promising. We'll see. I just ran around and picked up all of the tools, and I've got like 2 or 3 of these gray shirts that I wear when I'm working, so at the end of a work day they're all covered in grinder grit. I'm like, well, there's no sense throwing that in the laundry hamper because then it'll transfer. So I hang them out on the line, let the wind blow on them for a while. Sometimes that knocks the grit off. So I'll wear these shirts 2 or 3 times sometimes. And it's like, I only work for 3 hours a day, so it's let them air out overnight, wear them again. It's raining. Oh, it's so awesome. Anyway, so I'm starting to resent this whole thing, honestly. You know, it's like, if I get it to the point that it works, I don't know, I've had so many failures on it, I'm kind of like, do I trust it? You know? If I do a good job, it'll work. The parts I'm using should work. Just gotta be careful and get it right. Saturday, the 22nd. Fuck, I never thought this would take this long. Alright,